Hey, baby cakes. The camera's live. You are the camera girl and the computer again.
Still got maybe 30 pounds.
So you are broadcast.
Well, actually, everything else.
My wife makes jewelry.
Yeah, it's easy to sell.
Yeah, like we did.
Technology.
So. First batch was like 35 pounds.
Everybody.
I sold most of the second batch, was the same size.
I'm actually thinking about people right now for Thanksgiving, dying at all.
They had a little.
I thought about losing the belly, so.
Everybody had pre-sale
My first fry.
30 houses. She just threw a table down the end of the driveway and sold about.
Get an eye patch too, go all father.
Did you want it right here?
Oh, yeah.
Wherever you want.
And are you really live?
I am live right now. You can move it wherever you want. Yes, everyone knows we're all scattered at the beginning of every meeting. It's our trademark.
Anyone sitting in the front?
Nope.
Saw it on Facebook.
All right, so I'll go ahead and start off the meeting.
Go find a spot and park it.
We don't really have any new members, so I'll skip that part. We have people I haven't seen for a while.
Hey, how you doing?
All right. This is funny. For once, I actually get to get him. Hey, we're starting. I don't know that that's ever happened. Can we spot you, buddy? I'm fine with it.
No, I just figured I had another 20 minutes.
Gems or B samples?
Oh,
Kim's.
Make sure we look at those later.
I'll
I'm
check
interested too. All right. So reports. Secretary's report.
wow.
Well, nothing to report except I put the minutes on the website.
Which is super easier, in my opinion. For those who actually looked at those, to be honest, nobody did except me, right?
I did.
You did? All right. Those in favor of accepting the meetings minutes as posted last, signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same size, same sign. All right, accepted. Treasurer's report.
No activity since the last report, balance of just over $1,000.
The joy of the small club. We are very simple when it comes to these things. All right. I move that we accept those as read from last meeting and now.
I'll second that.
Well, those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Carries. Moving along. Bill's not here, but that's ironic because we have 4-H people here today. Moving along. See, look, I'm going to try to make this somewhat shorter. Website update, I can actually sort of half cover. It looks like we're actually getting traction on that. Ohio State's website is very sketchy and it has been a little bit difficult. But I think I'm going to buy a .com for our club. So in the next couple of days, there might be a .com. So I'll check the website or check the Facebook and we'll see what we do. I think it's probably better to start our own rather than be a daughter off of the Ohio State page because the Ohio State page is very restrictive. So
It's fine. So we'll just do our own and then we'll ask them to put a link on their webpage to ours.
that's exactly it. Because they'll put a link to our page, but then we don't have to go through their servers, which getting passwords from them seems to be like pulling teeth. So it's better to just keep it separate in many respects, make life easier. Let's see. Christmas party. So we still have to figure out where to go because they sold the range. So they don't own Urbandale anymore. So that's not going to work. I'm thinking we just take over a Panera Bread. They have that nice meeting room in the back.
Small.
That kind of makes it difficult for a potluck.
It does.
It won't be a potluck.
Yeah, obviously if we're going to Panera Bread, it won't be potluck.
They would probably frown when you bring in your own food.
It might be funny. You never know. I might, on the other hand, smuggle in a Dairy Queen cake just because I can. Because let's face it, they're not going to be that upset if we smuggle in a Dairy Queen cake. I'll say it's my birthday.
Oh, then they'll come and sing to you.
Oh, please don't.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Unless we had it in the greenhouse.
We can do that.
Well, that's an option.
Now I was thinking, what Monday is the third Monday?
Third Monday for,
17th. Because I don't know, it'd have to be after Christmas, unfortunately, because we have the brides at.
oh, I know, it's
Yeah.
chaos here.
Yeah, because it'd have to be after Christmas, because I forget, that's one reason why we couldn't have it up there, is because
Right.
wagon rides around.
Right.
But after Christmas, we don't have the nighttime. rides.
So what do you guys all think is the best thing to do? Guidance from the membership.
I thought the potluck was good last time. I think that was enjoyable.
We just need to have a place to have it,
Right.
is the question.
So
Make it
so-
January?
So do we want to make it after Christmas then and push it off? We can end up having 2 meetings in January. That's not really a big thing.
Hmm.
Or do we just skip December? Hate to do that, but
Yeah.
there's not a lot going on in December.
I say do it after the holidays, because everybody's got a lot of stuff going on.
So after the holidays, do we want to push it all the way to our normal meeting, or do we want to have 2 meetings in the same month? I'm perfectly fine with seeing you out twice. And I like food.
Just make it our January meeting. We can eat
So
and
potluck
talk
January meeting?
at the
that's-
same
you gonna
time.
Do elections or whatever in January, or was that?
Still eat, don't bother me none.
Yeah, I was just thinking, what else would be on the agenda for January?
The elections are tonight.
Oh, elections are tonight,
Technically, yeah.
technically.
I don't know if we have a quorum here.
Well, actually, we probably do,
Okay.
probably.
So potluck will be the January meeting then. We'll push it off to that. And I think we're probably just gonna flat skip December because we don't have a good place to meet.
Yeah.
Unless we all just want to meet at Panera Bread and not have that be our potluck, just a meeting. In fact, what I'll tell you is I'll be at Panera Bread. It can be an unofficial meeting, but I'm going to Panera Bread. So
You can't eat anything there.
yeah, I can. For one night, I'm totally gonna have a cheddar bowl.
Christmas present to himself.
The holiday season is not good for those on the keto diet.
No, it's not.
All right, so that's what's going on with that.
Oh.
More complicated than we would hope it needed to be, but hey, it happens. Is
So if we do the potluck in January, do you want it here? And if so, it would probably be better if I'm trying to think whether we wouldn't actually have it in here. Well, we could do it in our
you can do it in the
atrium.
classroom
Yeah.
or even the cafeteria.
Yeah, we can't use the cafeteria.
use the
But we
cafeteria?
could use the
That little
atrium.
room right
The
next
atrium,
to the.
yeah.
All right, so we'll do the
But
potluck.
I'll have to clear it with the powers that be.
Tentatively, we'll do the potluck in the atrium.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll do it in the greenhouse.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah.
The potluck's in January. Is there any additional old business? Let's see. New business. Upcoming speakers. Do we have anything on that? I don't have anything specifically to that. Is there anybody wants to hear? Any subjects that people want to hear? Am I just going to start talking again? Kind of what I do anyway. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll think about that then. I'll put up a poll as far as what people want to hear on our Facebook group, and we'll see what people are interested in. Because there's a few different topics that I'm very interested to talk about, but some of them are quite academic and boring for most people. So
Wax when rendering.
wax rendering, that's
Yeah.
we can do that.
What to do with wax?
That's fun. That one we may want to do in the greenhouse
Yeah.
because we can actually render some
Yeah.
wax.
Yeah. We could actually do stuff up there.
Not something a lot of people do.
Yeah.
All right. Elections. You want to take over for elections? You're good at this kind of thing.
Not really, but okay.
Fair enough.
So as of now, we've got 3 candidates for 7 positions. So, I don't know what you guys wanna do with it. We have, was it Ben?
Yep.
Ben said that he would run for treasurer.
Mm.
And Dan and I both decided that we're not stepping down, so we don't have a treasurer.
I mean, I will if
Anybody
anybody
running for
wants it.
treasurer. And then there's 3 trustee positions that basically are opening up.
You can't be a trustee for more than 1 year?
Oh,
Just weren't asked.
well,
No.
nobody said that they wanted to run for trustee, so.
Right.
I volunteer.
What exactly does the trustee do?
Not a whole lot, really.
Well, I could always step in.
No, seriously, trustees basically are supposed to, in a bigger club,
Yeah.
they would be the kind of the overseers of the executive committee.
Make sure that the money's being spent.
Making sure
appropriately, that kind of thing.
Making sure you're all trustworthy.
Well,
Right.
no, well, essentially, yeah, they're supposed to look out for the members'
Well, best interest, yeah.
best interests
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. They're voting members
Mhm.
of the executive board. But I mean, as small as our club is, it's kind of, everybody
We-
already knows what
We have to have them, they're a formality.
they're part of our bylaws.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of what do they really do? Well, you know.
No, I always make sure you got a place to meet here. You know.
So you're interested in trustee?
Yeah, I could step in
Fantastic.
as that.
Okay, so we got
2 trustees.
We have
Who wants to be a
Linda,
third?
Valerie for trustee. We're still looking for a treasurer.
I'm running for treasurer.
Or,
No,
we're
still
looking
looking for a
for
secretary.
Secretary,
Can everybody jump up
taker.
on this?
That's the hard sell.
yeah.
The secretary, basically what the secretary has been doing for us is keeping the minutes of the meeting and posting them on Facebook once a month. And, what else do you do? I mean, that's pretty much what, and then, do you do membership or does the treasurer do membership?
I don't
I don't know. Anyway, I guess it's actually treasurer takes care of membership because he's the one who collects the money for it.
Yeah.
So, it's basically just taking
Record
minutes. Record keeping of the minutes and.
And again, being pretty small, there's not a lot of records.
I'm terrible at taking notes myself. So
Yeah,
don't look
so-
at me.
Fair enough.
Could one be treasurer and secretary? Is that allowed?
I guess there's nothing in the bylaws to say that.
We didn't say you couldn't.
And since it says you can't, since there's nothing that says you can't, I guess it means you can't.
What I
I'll
would
do it
say.
if no one else will.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That makes life easier.
It'd be nice if we had more people here tonight, but.
So one of the things like we're gonna try to do is keep doing the camera filming. So if nothing else, you can always just review it later and see what actually happened.
If I
There's
black out or
evidence.
something, or-
Log out frustration. Yes.
Does make life easier, really. I mean, I'm sure I look silly on the internet, but it's fine.
A lot of people do.
And we have one last trustee position open. Again, trustee doesn't do a lot. Somebody take the bullet. And no, you can't
Yeah,
be a
one more
trustee, a
treasurer.
secretary.
Oh,
Fantastic.
All right, so I don't think we even actually need to take a vote. Or we can just say we accept the
Well,
minutes.
that's exactly it.
We
I
just
move that we accept
everybody-
as discussed.
I second it.
All in favor, signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Yay, we're all officers. No, literally. We're all officers.
Hey, you snooze, you lose now.
So one thing to keep in mind is we are a really small club, and we go through this weird cycle where more people show up and then no one shows up. And we were talking about that. We really don't understand why. So if anybody has any ideas to get more people active and involved, I think the Saturday class will definitely help, having a little more hands-on over a much longer span of time. Because the hour before the meetings, we're going to keep doing that, but that is a very quick, that's not that informative. If you really want to learn a lot, that is not a good time to learn a lot. That's a time to get a basic overview.
Intro.
Right.
Get comfortable working in a hive and
Right.
working quickly.
So the Saturdays are going to be much more in depth, much more nerdy.
Yeah. It also has a lot to do with time of year, I'm sure.
It does, for
And
sure.
People get busy and different things.
But if anybody has any ideas on classes they'd like to see, if they want to set up some kind of study group where we study a specific style of beekeeping, because there are different styles. If anybody wants to have a different hive that we run up there, everything we're running right now is long straw, but I built a horizontal hive, a Kenyan top bar hive.
Top bar.
that I wanna
I would
bring
think
out.
it'd be kind of cool to see a top
So
bar.
I want to start getting some of the different hive types out there so people can see what the differences are. I don't necessarily like the other hive types, but they are interesting in how they run. So if anybody wants to get involved in that and they think that it would bring in people, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, so something for people to think about.
We could always set up a top bar up here somewhere.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
set it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
for
I was
sure.
thinking that would be an interesting interpretive thing for the farm park itself,
Oh, for sure.
talking about it.
They're a huge pain to run though.
Yeah, I know.
Eh.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have our observation hive up and running
Yes,
next
yeah.
spring.
We're looking to do that, and we're going to do the
Oh, there's no
whole
question.
area there with more interpretive stuff right there with
Yeah, there's
Gary.
no question.
What I want to do is come up with signs that go up and have people look and observe what's in the hive. You know, can you spot this? Can you spot that? Yeah, kind of a
Absolutely.
thing.
You think if we combine the Saturday event with the monthly meeting, that we might improve attendance?
I don't know, and I'm not necessarily opposed to that. So that's definitely something to bring up. I think a lot of people don't like giving up Saturdays, but I think that some people will because they're actually getting into the hives and it's a little more in depth. So I don't know.
I think that I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think that we should put it to a bigger group. You know, when we have more people, maybe if we could do a poll on Facebook or something like that about would a Saturday meeting that we had, you know.
Because I know some people actually do go all the way down to Medina, which I think is crazy at this time of the night. But we have some people that might be more active if we weren't on the same night as Medina's meetings. We originally weren't going to move off of that, but it seems like they may actually win on that one.
Well, we voted on that one.
We did?
We brought that got brought up for a vote and it was shut down. You know, it was like, no, we don't want to move our meeting night.
Yeah, and I really don't want to. Like, this is a very convenient night for me, but I'll make a convenient night for me. You know, I want the association to succeed, kind of the point. You know, I want people to get into beekeeping more. That's kind of my thing. So something to think about.
I think the biggest trick, because we're part of the Trumbull County Club, we meet on Sundays at 2. You have the same scenario.
Yeah.
You know, we're moving to weeknights because thinking there's a lot of folks that don't want to go up there weekend days, so we're to try weeknights, but it's the same thing. You know, we get some days. I think a lot of it has to do with the agenda.
Yep.
You know, if you send the agenda out, if they're not interested in making mead, then people won't come. You know, if they are interested, then people will come. You know, so I think the agenda has a lot to do with it as well. Getting that out as soon as you can. No offense, Doug, I know you said you were late today, but you know, I think that has a lot to do with it.
I think maybe more chatter on Facebook prior to the meeting might, specifically maybe what time they do it.
Our Facebook postings have just dramatically dropped off a lot.
Due to the season 2, those are the same way.
Well, there's not a lot to do.
Some
Yeah.
you get a lot of stuff, people asking questions and things going, and then as the
Yeah,
winter
when
starts
things
coming-
are not very active in the hives and stuff like that, they're not really involved in it as much.
Right.
It's kind of the hibernation season.
But that might be something for, you know, the people who have been actually coming. We can go on there and try to push that a little bit, just have conversations ourselves. Especially since even though it's off season, there's still some questions. I know a lot of people, you know, the more nitty gritty stuff, the beekeeping. If anybody wants to talk about, you know, how to identify pollen and things like that. Yeah, Yes, I'm that much of a nerd. Any additional new business?
I don't know, would Ella's presentation fall under new business? Or are we just gonna get through the meeting and then we'll have Ella give her presentation and then?
Well, you get an interesting spot here because the next one is open floor. So open floor, I'm just gonna give it to her.
Okay.
So could go either way.
I've heard that much.
All right. Well, I'm gonna turn it over to you then. You can tell us what you did for your summer.
What did I do for my summer vacation?
I think everybody knows Ella Moss. She was the young lady that we voted in to for the 4-H. And I did a quick scan through her booklet there. I didn't even know 4-H had a booklet that they gave out. I guess it gave her kind of a guideline. But anyway,
Very nice.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew Ella Moss, and we'll let her do her thing.
Do a little bit more background. You know, she's in 4-H, and OSBA and 4-H work together to put together sponsorships, and they sponsor, I think, 5 kids every year. So she applied for it, and that's how it kind of came to discussion in one of our meetings. And they said, if she isn't one of the ones selected, then we can sponsor her. So that's kind of what ended up happening is some folks from the club got with, well, I'll let Ella explain more of that, but got her a sponsorship, and then that's what she's here to talk about. So I'll talk here. So she did a presentation, but we don't have.
Unfortunately, I feel bad that
That's okay.
I don't have a wall.
So go ahead.
Goes that way.
Yeah.
So. I got it. You're good.
I was sponsored by Queen Wright Colonies, and they gave me a full hive with some other tools like a hive tool, a feeder, a veil, gloves. And Kathy gave me an apiary diagnostic kit, which I've used parts of, and it's really nice to have. I got to paint the hive any way I wanted, and we put wax up on the frames. I went to classes in a convention down in Columbus and bought some more equipment. We got our bees. I used a 3-pound package. And we don't have our hives at our house, but where we have our hives, they have a sweet little dog named Honey.
Yeah, it was kind of ironic.
It's adorable.
I marked my queen, and then she stopped laying eggs after 2 weeks, so we got another queen. And then she flew away. I got a 3rd queen.
She's all right.
She's
3 times the charm.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to inspect a hive and do an alcohol wash. I know how to find eggs and larvae along with caproot and honey. For my 4-H, I got a project book and went through it, and then I presented to my 4-H club stuff about beekeeping, and then I was selected to go to State Fair. At State Fair, I used this poster and got judged.
Good job, Vanna.
I will be the Vanna White.
We'll leave this up here, so if you guys want to come up and look at it afterwards, you can. And her poster.
Thank you to the County Beekeepers Association and Dan for letting me come speak. Thank you, Doug, for taking your time out of the day to come to Queens Wright with me. Thank you to Chuck and Mickey for getting in touch with Queens Wright, and thanks to Kathy for giving me the apiary diagnostic kit. And thanks to Dad for being my whole family to beekeeping.
She brought cupcakes for everybody.
And it really is a whole family kind of thing.
Oh, it is. So there's lots of pictures, so.
That's very good.
One could make a fair argument for beekeeping and mental illness. Both being, family conditions. That was very good. Yes, there are cupcakes if anybody, in fact, we'll take a short break so that we can hit the cupcakes, and then I will talk about mead making.
Cake, my weakness, along with ice cream.
Most excellent.
And you're hungry too.
I am hungry, it makes it hard. Should I continue to broadcast?
Yeah, just let it run.
Okay. There's nobody watching.
No, but
Maybe I can learn to
this
edit.
gets pasted straight to Facebook, to the YouTube. So this will be on YouTube later.
Can you edit something that was live?
That's why I bought you that big expensive laptop. Yes,
The one that I just left somewhere.
it's over there.
It's over there.
Thank you, ma'am. What flavor are you?
So when I do the mead making, there's really not that many people here. You guys can all actually just step up to the front, stand around it. It's way easier to get a class when everybody's actually seeing what's going on.
Would you like it after this?
Sure.
But I
Thank
do
you.
like making some.
Oh, they're so cute.
No, the first time you get a significant quantity of honey, I feel like it's almost obligatory that you make food. Like, this is why they did it back in the day.
The heck with the honey.
Well, if you go back to historical references, a lot of it really was they just wanted to make booze. That was the end goal. They didn't really sweetener. What's that?
Yeah.
Food. Yay. I want the water that
Share
makes it
this
roar.
with me?
No, I don't want it at all.
What?
Staying keto.
What? You're staying keto?
Cake's not my weakness. Ice cream is.
Both of them.
Cake and ice cream. I, on the other hand.
Both of them are my
I
weakness.
was saying I'll bring a bloody ice cream cake to the potluck. I ain't proud. Do I have to pick? Do I have to pick? Smoothie. All right, so just recently I found no, I'm good. No. So recently I came across a birthday cake crunch at East Coast Custard.
No, chocolate cake crunch.
Yeah, but the birthday cake crunch is even better. I speak too much, it's fine, but that stuff is like crack. My name is Dan, and I have a problem. I did very well on keto. I lost a bunch of weight, and then I fell off keto pretty hard. So now I'm going to get back on keto, so I'm fighting the power.
I managed to get past my vacation, get back on that. Vacation's tough.
I lost like 40 pounds. Like, you don't necessarily think about it. If you look at my IDs, because I kept the old IDs, because it got so bad that if you looked at the old ID, they were going to be like, that's not you, bro. That's... Sorry, man, we don't buy it. Oh, I wouldn't have made a security check.
I'd do better if my husband wasn't doing the cooking. And he loves pasta.
For pure entertainment value.
Did you get any honey this year?
No, not with all the swarming and.
There was a lot of queens going off there.
thing, yeah.
Do this with the mall. There you go.
Wow.
Oh, I did, because they're ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
I mean, I know back in the day, if somebody came to the gate when I was in the army and they were like, yeah, bro, that's not you. Yeah. I'm making your brother maybe, but that ain't you.
Omaha. Yes.
Look, you know you've lost a lot of weight when you have to shim your hat. Because it sits on my ears. It falls all the way down.
Yeah, you don't think about it sometimes.
Yeah, I did not think about how much weight I lost until I had to shim my hat. Yeah, so you're not left out. Look how bad that was.
Well, I had to start actually using my belts.
You really did take a lot of weight off him. Actually, a little surprised how well that worked. But I'll tell you what, keto for a beekeeper is sort of like a punishment.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to work on that hive with that delicious stuff right there. Oh, I'm hungry. Bird comb. Oh, that was always my treat. Which is why I'm looking like Winnie the Pooh, mind you. But funny. All right, so I'll give you guys a minute to eat your cupcakes, and then I'll have you guys all assemble up here and around.
I'm gonna have to hold the camera probably.
Yeah, and you can move over to the center. Make your life hard. So the one that I'm going to do today is it is an apple pie, okay? And it is an apple cider, but I'm also making it a boucher. And a boucher is a nice way of saying in French that I ruined a whole bunch of honey. Okay? So historically, what they actually did when they were making a boucher is they took honey and they dripped it into a cast iron cauldron and they burned it until it smoked.
Yeah, I need at least one
Okay?
seat.
And that caramelized the honey and pretty much left a really disgusting burnt flavor. You can do the exact same thing in the modern world if you take the honey and you put it in a pressure canner and you pressure can the honey. So this honey was pressure canned at 15 pounds for an hour, which leaves you with a truly disgusting honey. It tastes bad, and I'll be the first to tell people that, but a lot of the flavors that are off go away, and they leave almost like a whiskey-ish after flavor. So it's actually quite pleasant in the mead, while it is not pleasant on its own. So fun thing to know. Sterility is overrated with mead making, which sounds terrible, but keep in mind, honey is a self-sterilizer, okay? So one of the things you can do if you want to sterilize it is just pour the honey in and then make sure it touches every surface, okay? Now, what I did is I took straight up vodka and I rinsed this out just a little while ago with vodka, okay? And the powder that you're seeing in here, okay, what that is that it's pectin enzyme. So if you're going to make a sizer and you're going to use apples, I highly recommend that you use a pectin enzyme. Pectin haze is why a lot of wines made with apples won't clear. It's actually, a lot of times grapes will get you too. So anytime they've pasteurized stuff, that can be a real problem, okay? But don't overthink mead. This is literally the oldest alcoholic drink that man has, and it is dead simple to make, which is why it's funny when people, I'm not confident I can make that. Again, I sterilize this with vodka. Now, if you go to a brewery, the other option you can buy is this lovely product called Star Sands, okay? I highly recommend this stuff. It will slightly turn things a little bit orangey, which isn't a big deal if you have too much left in it. But you can brew, the yeast just uses nutrients if there's a little bit of residue. Don't use bleach. Bleach is detectable to the human tongue at parts per billionth. So if you ever bleach your equipment, you're going to have to rinse that forever to get that out. So you can almost ruin your equipment with bleach. Okay? It won't be that hard to see, but if you look at the bottom, there's a lot of trib, there's a lot of debris in these. Okay? So you can't trust that that doesn't have a little bit of yeast in it. So when you first buy brand new cider from anywhere, if it's not fresh to the point where like they made it today for you in front of you, assume that there's a little bit of contamination. Set another one down. See it right in the bottom. There's just a little bit of floaty stuff. Just a little bit of floaty. But the way you get rid of that, the easiest way anyway, is actually quite lazy. In your funnel, take literally polybat. Okay? Just put the polybat in, back to the alcohol of the Star Sands, What are you laughing at?
I'm trying to light you a little.
Oh, it's adorable. So I like to wipe the tops with the high alcohol or the Star Sands. It's your choice which one you use, but alcohol tends to be easier. I mean, I'm just making alcohol, so I like to rinse them off. That cuts down on possible contamination, okay? And then just open it up. Now, for 5-gallon batches, I like to use, depending on whether this is fresh or whether it's been pasteurized. This has been pasteurized. It's been flash pasteurized. Because of that, I want to use more than I normally would. So I'm using a full tablespoon. Normally, I would only use half that. So teaspoon and a half. Okay? And you literally just pour it straight through the top. And it will filter out through the polybat, and it will leave a little bit of that stuff that was floating behind. And you'll see that in the filter in a minute. It smells so good.
It's better to use pasteurized or unpasteurized.
I like to use as fresh as I can get, but I like Sages. I don't really like Pedersons for this. If you're gonna make your own, what's that?
It's too filtered.
It's 2 filters. But if you have access to your own apples, okay, the best kind of apples to use are the kind you can't eat. If you bite into it and it is inedible, if you go, oh God, it's horrible, that's gonna make really good alcohol. The old term was spitters. You want spitters. You want ones that immediately, oh God. Those actually tend to be the highest in sugar. You don't think about that, but they tend to be higher in sugar. They've just got some other things that make them particularly foul. Now, because pouring in the cider will actually self-mix it, I'm going to add basically a half a gallon of that destroyed, ruined, burnt honey. Not really, because this particular batch, that honey was, when you cook it, it actually gets thinner because you've broken down a lot of its structure, so it runs pretty quick. But I mean, I can't tell you, it's gross. Here, hold on, I'll
Pass some around.
try that.
So what happened to this honey now?
It has been burned to shit.
Just in a pressure cooker, right?
That's gross. That is, I like to share.
Double dipping.
No risk of that.
I am always entertained when people are like, well, how bad is it? Oh,
I already tell you that.
the first guy who did this, all I can imagine is he was like, man, I can't waste it. Damn. It had to be like a house fire or something, because you wouldn't have done that on purpose. And this was actually like a regular trefoil. It was like a lighter honey. This is purposefully dark. This has got a lot of Japanese knotweed in it. I don't like Japanese knotweed at all, but Japanese knotweed also brews well because it gives you kind of a molassesy, caramely.
You're not gonna lick your finger.
Totally not gonna lick your fingers. Delightful, right? That's not the right word. No. All right, so this I'm gonna put in about a half. I'm not gonna put in all of this.
This one hasn't been burnt then.
This one has not been burnt.
Okay.
But I will also tell you that this is not, in my opinion at least, a particularly tasty honey. Knotweed, depending on the area you were in, you may have gotten some knotweed this year. I mean, it's not good. I'll be the first to tell you it's not good. It's just not horrible.
If you like buckwheat, it's.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's sweet at least.
Yeah, it's sweet at least. That's after the other one, it's quite pleasant.
Like I said, it tastes a
Huh?
little more like buckwheat. Now, it tastes like glasses. Now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So one dumb trick here is to just put some cider back into the main batch and then shake the tar out of it, and you can get the rest of the stuff off the walls.
Now that debris in the bottom of the cider is what?
What you see, oh,
So what the proper term in brewing is trub. It's, it's basically junk when they press it. You're going to have a small amount of pulp that gets through. You're going to have a small amount of yeast that start naturally fermenting. Because they end up pasteurizing it, the yeast go dormant, but it's still there. And that's what you're dealing with. So now I try to get the rest of that funky honey back out. You don't have to get too greedy. I could do this longer and I could get it all, but for the purpose of the class, you get the idea. The other advantage to that is you're aerating a little bit of the must, okay? And when you're brewing, it's important when you first start out that you get oxygen introduced into the must. Yeast, when it's going through its life cycle, as long as it's got oxygen in the must, the yeast multiply and you get more yeast. When you seal it and they run out of oxygen, that's when they switch over to making alcohol. They're no longer interested in making more of themselves. Now they're making booze. So the game is to get them happy, let them multiply to make lots of themselves, and then all switch at once over to making the alcohol. So now I just simply take the rest of this and pour it in. Super exciting, right? So mead making is a fascinating thing because it's so much simpler than people try to make it out to be. Literally so easy a caveman can do it.
and you did.
Finally got my wife to smile at that one. I've been working for that all night.
Tough audience.
Tough audience, right? There's really no good way to pour faster for this, so bear with me. All right, bigger funnel. There's always a critic. I guess technically you're not wrong.
Now the honey that sits on the bottom will eventually mix in
So,
on its own.
There's two things you can do, okay? You can leave the honey on the bottom, or you can buy a ginormous spoon.
Or a big stick.
I like the ginormous spoon. So one of the things that I'll show you as soon as I pour this in the rest of the way is we're going to get a specific gravity reading, okay? And this is where we're going to leave, primitive Viking brewing techniques, and we'll go into a little bit more of the modern tech. And again, we're not going that deep into it. If anybody has any mead questions, I can probably talk your ears off as bad with mead making as beekeeping. I'll spare you that unless you want it. But I do make a fair amount of hooch in a year. Under Ohio law, I'm allowed to make 400 gallons in my house because I am a married man and there are 2 adults. At one point, I was probably pushing that limit. But I do not, haven't really done as much in the last year. But yeah, I used to brew a lot more.
Are you allowed to sell it?
No. On the other hand, I am allowed to give it to friends, okay, but not as barter. So I'm more than willing to give it to people as long as they understand that it really is a gift. Don't give me anything. Like, if you want to give me gifts, that's cool, but it's not related. Because the ATF has no chill. And that's a very, I know people who've kind of skirted that law They'll be like, oh, you're not buying the mead, you're buying the bottle for $35. Yeah, I'm sure my lawyer wouldn't think that was as funny. So, you know, when I give it to people, I really do mean it as a gift. Someday, I hope to have a meadery and actually sell it with a meadery or a wine license and all the rest. So I try not to do anything that the ATF is going to think isn't funny.
This is more your chance to experiment with a lot of different things.
That's exactly it. This is me playing, and I don't mind sharing because I'm playing. Okay? So, what's up? I should have kept one. I do like to keep one handy. It's a good place to stick your funnel so that while this is dripping and it's not, you're never going to get everything out of it. You let it drip, it doesn't drip all over the table.
Keeps the air clean.
Yep. All right. So, like I said, you find that trib, you'll see like the peels, you'll see various things. So, I mean, it's not that big a deal, but it can be a little bit of a pain. So it's easier just to filter it that way. I've seen people use cheesecloth. I've seen people use a lot of other things. Cheesecloth works. Don't get me wrong, but you know, cheesecloth is actually a lot more expensive than a bag full of fluff. All right. Now I did this before, but I'll do it again real quick. You just nice little wiping of alcohol. Get it clean.
Just out of curiosity, is that made for this, or is that?
This spoon?
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally
I was
is.
gonna say, it's not something you just see at Walmart. I don't picture you.
Procure a lot of your supplies.
So I buy a lot of mine at the Brew in Menor, which is a brew store.
Okay.
But you don't have to. You can buy it from a lot of other places. I do recommend them. They are exceptionally knowledgeable, you know, because that's really where you're going to buy your yeasts and whatnot if you want good strains.
They're in the Diamond Center Plaza where, you know, Home Depot, Sam's Club.
Okay. And if you tell them, I sent you, yeah.
Okay.
And if you tell him I sent you, he will know exactly that you're making mead, and he will tell you, you know, over there.
But he'll charge you more.
No, he won't. I sent a lot of people there.
You can find a lot of this stuff on Amazon too.
Absolutely. Of course, if you wind up at the Trumbull County Viking Festival, I sell kits. I teach a mead making class there like 2 times a day, 3 days in a row. By the end of the week, I'm like, oh, sobriety, I miss you. My liver says no. I always laugh because I bring like 15 to 20 gallons of mead, and then I see how fast we can all drink it in 3 days. It's quite entertaining. The best part of that is the Vikings used to have an old virtue that you were supposed to be able to drink all night and still function and party in the daytime. Okay? So I like to get everybody a lot of mead the night before, and then in the morning I'm super obnoxious and I go table to table getting good deals on everything because they just want me to leave. You guys drank too much. Shame on you. All right. So now that that's nice and mixed up, this is where we're going to go into the modern end. Okay. Now, to be fair, the Vikings actually did something that was kind of ingenious. They would take a hen's egg that was a relatively fresh hen's egg, and they would float the hen's egg, and they would know what this is reading by where it floated. Okay. You can get a specific gravity by floating an egg. It tells you how much sugar is. This is so much easier. Now, I broke this somehow earlier, so I'm going to have to buy another one. You can see little micro cracks in here. But for the purposes of this, it'll work just fine. Back to my favorite thing, rubbing everything with alcohol, keep it clean. Okay, and what you'll do here, this is called a wine thief. Okay, and you bounce it like that, and it will collect up enough alcohol that you can pull out a sample. Okay? And now, I don't know how many of you guys can see it, but I've got numbers that are written right on the side here, and it tells me how much sugar and how much potential alcohol that sugar solution will make. Okay? So, slowly letting it come around. I'm sitting at 1.0592. Okay, so this would come out realistically, if I added yeast to it right now, it would come out to about 12 to 13%. That would be how strong this would make an alcoholic beverage. Okay, it will go up slightly, maybe 0.5% or so, because I added that pectin, and that's going to break down the pectin into a fermentable sugar. Okay, so at this stage, I can just let it drain out. Okay, everything's been pretty sterile. My finger been in alcohol 6 times now. I can set this over here, or do something equally as silly. We're going back old school. Yep, that'll work.
Good.
Mostly just trying to keep the tables clean. Okay. That wasn't as alcoholic as I would want it. Okay. So me personally, add more honey. Now, generally speaking, you want to be above 10%. Okay. You don't have to go for diesel fuel. The higher you make it, the less it's going to be, drinkable. You will eventually end up reaching an upper limit where the yeast will simply go dormant. But I know the yeasts that I use will usually handle up to about 18 to 20%. So I usually want it to be more like 15% or so. Back to the stirring. Now, I usually recommend going completely dry. So put in a yeast that's going to about the range of the sugar you've added. Okay, and then back sweeten it and stabilize it after the fact, which I won't go into too much right now. I'll just assume you're going to brew dry. The advantage to brewing dry is you don't have bottle bombs. So if you put honey in and you've got more honey than the yeast can consume, and the majority of the honey go dormant, you're going to have that 1 or 2% of the population that just keeps making alcohol. And they make it to a ridiculously high tolerance. Sometimes you'll get a bottle that'll go 25%. Okay? What'll happen at that point is your bottle will just shatter. You'll think you're done, you didn't stabilize, you'll end up with a bottle that cracks or pushes the cork out and sprays your house. I swear to God, I'll paint the ceiling someday.
Right before we move.
Right before we move, there you go. That's a good line. Probably true even. So, mix. Now, you can use old glass bottles. I prefer to do 5-gallon batches or bigger, but that's a personal preference. 5-gallon batches are more stable because the ingredients are easier to measure, but you can do smaller amounts if you were so compelled. So you don't have to use this big of a carboy. In fact, the kits I sell at Pagan Fest or at the Viking Festival, they're only this size bottle. In fact, that's one of the bottles. So back to this. Okay. And that brought me up to 1.1, call it 1.11. Couldn't do that again if I had to. Okay. And that is potential alcohol of 15% basically. Okay. So I'm perfectly comfortable at 15%. So I'm going to go ahead and call this mixed. Now, when you're brewing, okay, one of the things that you'll run into is a lot of the flavors are taken right out and they go right out through the airlock, okay? Meaning that the flavors are delicate and the yeast consume what's actually causing the flavor, or the yeast themselves generating enough heat, they just go out the airlock because the temperature is being too high. Okay, that's where the type of yeast that you pick makes a difference. Okay, for this particular batch, I'm actually going to use Safe Cider, which is specifically a cider yeast, and it's known for the yeast actually producing an apple flavor. So that yeast actually makes an apple flavor. A lot of the yeasts make different flavors or no flavors at all, depending on what kind of yeast you're going for. Champagne yeasts tend to not make any flavors, but they tend to brew hotter, and that tends to lose flavors. So you end up with a very mellow alcohol. Okay, but for mead making, you'll find 1118 is a very popular strain. 1118 is what you would normally use to put into wine, to turn it into champagne, to actually purposefully carbonate it. So this yeast is very, very tolerant of bad conditions. I don't recommend this one personally, but when you go on the internet and you look up mead making, everybody will talk about this yeast. It's more for like a Polish style yeast or a Polish style mead, which tends to be the ones that burn in the back of the throat. And I tend to like more like what the Vikings and the Finnish drank, which was pretty delicate. It was more like French wine, kind of snooty. It had flavor. The other big option is 71B. 71B leaves a lot of the note of the honey. So if you've got a good tasting honey, that's a good one because it'll leave the flavor of the honey intact. The problem with that one is when the yeast settle, if you don't get it off of the lees quick enough and rack it to another bottle, it will absolutely turn to a soap flavor. So that one soponifies, and it's absolutely gnarly. We've done that twice to ourselves. You can get that flavor out by aging it long enough, but it's a pain. D47 is by far, and I don't have that one with me, but D47 is by far the most forgiving strain. You could forget to rack it for probably, I don't know, 20 years, and all it would add is a pleasant nutty flavor. So for that reason, for brand new mead makers, if you're slightly uncomfortable with the process, use the D47. It's Nerf. So at this point, and this is still cold because that honey was in my car, and so was the apple cider. I'm not going to pitch the yeast. I'm going to let this sit at home for a while to warm up. If you pitch in the yeast into a cold batch, it will start very slowly if it starts at all. Okay, so I'm going to let this warm up, and then I'm going to put in this. So I would add this at this point. Okay.
Do you proof these first at all, or do you just put it in?
You can. If I was going to pitch it cold, I would definitely have had a starter first. But I'm not going to bother for this. And if you want, again, if you get more into the advanced type mead making, you're going to use something called yeast nutrients. Okay. But for what we're doing, first of all, there's a lot of nutrition in apples. So the cider itself probably has enough nutrition all on its own. But a very common thing to do to give the yeast just that little bit of extra health benefit is take a small handful of raisins. The raisins will actually provide quite a bit of nutrition for that yeast. So just a handful of raisins. And then because it's going to end up being an apple pie one in the end, I'm going to add 3 cinnamon sticks. Now, adding the cinnamon sticks at the front end like this, most of the cinnamon flavor is actually going to go up and out the airlock. I'll also add a secondary cinnamon stick. So I'll add another cinnamon stick when I rack this over and leave this behind. And what I mean by racking, so pretend this has yeast. It's now doing its thing. Okay, you'll put the top on. You'll take your bung and you'll push the bung in first. Now, it doesn't matter as much with this type of fermenter, but with the glass type fermenters, the pressure on the walls is very important. So push this piece in first and then put your airlock on. And what the airlock does is the airlock lets air out, but it doesn't let air in. Okay, and then you'll fill this with either water, alcohol. My recommendation is actually food grade glycerin. That was the best tip I ever got from a winery, because food grade glycerin, if it somehow got into it, it's edible. The yeast just use it, but its osmotic pressure is high enough because it's a pure alcohol, a sugar alcohol. Nothing can live in it. It doesn't solidify out and harden, and it doesn't evaporate. So I can then put this in a cupboard for a couple of years if I forget about it, and it's not going to turn to vinegar on me because that's never going to fail. So food grade glycerin, stupid good trick.
What temperature do you want to have it sitting at?
In an ideal world, it depends on the yeast that you're using. I usually like to go for 60, right around 60. A little bit colder, 55, like a basement. That's perfectly acceptable. You don't want to go real hot. So if you got like a back sun deck, don't go there. The warmer the yeast, the more off flavors you're going to get normally. So you want to have relatively cool temperatures. Too cold and it will take forever. So 60. If you're in a room that's 60 degrees, this will probably heat itself up to 80. They'll actually make its own heat. And you'll see it boiling. The other trick that you can do, in fact, while I'm talking about it, I should do it because that's why I brought it. I also have bentonite clay. Okay. Bentonite clay is a fining agent, and it's an interesting thing because many people will use it at the end to help a wine clear, but you can also use it at the very beginning. And what it'll do is it'll attract certain particles to it, and as the yeast go up and down, it'll scrub it so that it becomes clearer. That also takes out some flavor, so there's upsides and downsides to it. But because of the fact that I'm doing a bochet, that I've got the burnt flavors, this will scrub a lot of the burnt flavor, leaving the caramel. Because nobody wants the flavor of that honey in their booze. Let's be honest, that'd be a deal breaker. Now that you've got that, like so. That was dumb because this is, yeah, if you would. No, this is straight alcohol. It's, trust me, that is high enough proof. It is not a problem. Okay, Dankeschön. All right, so now it should be fermented, okay? Because again, pretend I added the yeast. I didn't. This particular type of airlock is different than the S-shaped ones you normally find, and I recommend this over the S-type because this will let more gas out faster. Mead explosively ferments. If you've got it right and it's healthy and happy, I mean, it will. I have literally fermented one of these out in 2 days. Okay, beer usually takes a couple of weeks, and it's less alcohol. I cheat sometimes. I'll sometimes put one of these on a stir plate so it goes even quicker. If you just give it a shake like this, whenever you think about it, you know, throughout the day, that'll drive off the CO2. That's going to make it ferment even quicker, and that's going to probably make it taste better in the long run. The big problems you run into with mead making is mead makes a lot of CO2, and honey is already slightly acidic. When the CO2 builds up in the solution, you end up with the pH dropping to the point where the stress on the yeast becomes bad enough it starts making off alcohols. So if you can drive off some of that CO2, you won't develop those off alcohols. So a little bit of that goes a long way. Okay, but it'll be about anywhere between a week and a half to 4 weeks, and what you'll notice is you'll come down to just one bubble about every minute. When you get down that, you know, that low of a bubble count, you can then rack it over and get it off of the yeast that have settled. Okay, and you do that a couple of times until it's cleared to the point that you're comfortable drinking it. You can drink it with the yeast in solution. It has a little bit of a weird bread flavor, but it is technically drinkable at that point. I just like mine snobby and clear.
I'm a novice. What do you mean by racking over?
So what racking is there is a, you can use a racking cane or just literally a tube. Okay, I like the cane. It's literally, think of, you know, a stick like this with a tube on the end, and you put it in and you're siphoning this off the stuff that's settled on the bottom. That's all you're doing.
Basically siphoning off the stuff
Yep,
on top and leaving the sediment behind.
That's all it is. You're taking it away from the sediment. That's racking. Okay.
I just didn't know we called it racking.
Yeah, no, it's racking. So one trick to make your life easier with racking, take this and set it someplace that's cold. If you can get it down to about anywhere between like 35 and 40 degrees, so sit it on like a back stoop or something. Cold water doesn't hold very much in solution, so a lot of that stuff will fall out, and you'll only have to rack once or twice rather than racking 3 or 4 times, because that first rack when it's cold gets most everything out of solution. You can save yourself time that way. It's one of the reasons I like to do a lot of my brewing in the wintertime, because as soon as I'm to the point where I want to rack, I just literally go set it in a snowbank. Come back in about 3 hours and everything's fallen out and it's very clear at that point. And then I rack it, you know, bring it inside, let it settle again, rack it, and then do it again in a couple of days. So I can speed rack that way.
I'm assuming you're racking it into another sterile container.
Another one just like this. Though your final racking is straight into wine bottles. And put on corks.
Sterile, right?
Yeah, you always want to have sterilized. Once you're done with fermenting, you always want to have sterilized practices. Now, I won't go into making it shelf stable. So at this point, drink. Making it shelf stable is a much longer class, and I'm more than happy to talk about that with anybody. But the chemistry of that will bore most of you to tears. I know because I've talked to several wineries about it, and they look bored to tears. My shock was that a lot of the wineries don't actually do it right. So when you explain how to do it right, they're like, many people get headaches from drinking wine, and it's because they add sulfur to the wine. They add the metabisulfite, and a lot of people are, you know, a little bit sensitive to sulfites. But if you did it correctly, you would never have that problem because you didn't put too much in, you put just right. And the way a lot of wineries do it, they can be over by 50%. Because it doesn't really matter to them. Metabisulfate's dirt cheap. So, but that's
the easy way.
But this is basic simplicity. I mean, this would be drinkable in 4 months. Anybody have any questions?
What kind of alcohol is it?
Kind of what?
What kind of alcohol?
That?
Yeah.
High proof.
High proof. Oh, so it's vodka or something like that, or?
Yeah, this is Everclear basically.
Okay.
Moonshine.
Lab grade.
Got it.
White lightning.
Lab grade. To be fair, if you know somebody who got a distillery, if you buy 4-shot, which is, you know, all the crap you can't drink, that actually works for sterilization as well because it evaporates off.
Higher the alcohol content, the bigger it evaporates.
But Star Sand's probably the easiest one for most folks to get their hands on. And I definitely recommend it for most things. For shows, Star Sand's unwieldy. That's a lot quicker for demonstration purposes. But Star Sand's what I normally use. Who wants to waste their booze?
That's true. Okay.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I was thinking I was gonna do this. I got a glass carboy,
By all means.
not as big, but it's how do you clean it?
So
It's got the, you know, the small.
absolutely. So there is another product called One Step that I don't have with me. Okay. But what One Step is it is perchlorate. It's the same thing that you get in OxyClean without the detergent.
Okay.
Okay. You fill this up with water, you add a tablespoon of that, and it self-bubbles everything and clean.
There's also that
also
long thing that looks like a mop end.
That's
and you
exactly
put it
it.
on a drill and it kind of cleans inside.
And the brew sells both of those.
Oh, okay.
But that funky mop end thing, that does work much better for things that are crusty on the
How do you
inside.
clean out the beer bottles?
How do you clean out the beer bottles? So the way I clean out the beer bottles is I throw them in the trash can. but
No, I meant like I
They're
got
hard to clean.
refillable beer bottles that were,
So-
I got a couple cases of them.
so if you got a couple cases of the refillable beer bottles, the way you would normally clean those is, again, pistol drill with the brush, in and out. Okay, they make brushes specifically for that.
Brushes.
And
That
once you do that,
Wine bottle stand that has the,
and that's exactly it. And then you've got a big wine bottle stand you let them drain off of, and that's all it is.
but it has that thing that squirts like Star San.
Yep, Star San or metabisulfate.
You push the
Squirts it
bottle
through
on the
inside,
top and then
sterilizes
you hang
everything.
it.
The other one that's an option if you want to go old school is simply boil some water. Leave the cans in the boiled water, put them right on the tree to dry, and then bottle,
Just like you do when you're canning.
just like when you're canning. That's exactly it.
Now, do you have to use that apple cider to make mead, or is it?
Oh, no.
a particular one?
So technically, by using apple cider, this is a sizer, which is a fancy way of saying apple cider mead. But there are absurd names for every different thing you add to mead. There's another bloody variant. What is it? I'm not even going to try to pronounce them all, but if you go on the internet, there's this big chart where they list like 40 different names for mead, because if you add mint, it's called this. If you add grape, it's called a payment. I have interesting, fun history lesson. Fun history lesson. The reason that mead with grape in it is called payment is because you used to be able to pay your taxes in England that way. Honey, mead, and grape. There you go. It's a payment.
Now, can you use just straight water?
You can use straight water. I recommend using, so straight water, it's a little bit problematic sometimes because there's no nutrients in the yeast itself. Or I should say there's no nutrients in the honey. So I would definitely still recommend that handful of raisins. But you can buy nutrients, you can do a few things. If you go back historically, the way they got around it was they did what's called a whole hive mead. And they would literally take the whole beehive, crush it, wax dead bees and all, and then that's what would have been mixed into here. And they left that all behind when they racked it. Oh, that scares me. But I've seen people do it. It's potluck whether it's good or bad, because they didn't have access to yeast packets. They were using the bee bread. So they were using wild yeast. Usually come out to around 8 to 12%. You never knew.
The water that we like to use is Crystal
Geyser. It's at the dollar store.
Dollar store. You get the big jugs. And it's a good spring water that has a good flavor.
Yep.
Basic.
But any good creek water, you can get you can use some pretty sketchy water because you're making alcohol out of it. It's going to kill anything that was in it. So as long as the contamination isn't chemical, that was kind of the point of early brewing, was it made water you couldn't drink, water you could drink. Why for a long time in Europe, people did not drink water. Every meal was alcohol. Everything they drank was alcohol. Cider, even early American history, everything, your daily drink was cider. If you go back to how much they drank back in the day, you'd be like, oh, they were all alcoholics. No, they just couldn't trust the well. Well water killed a lot of people historically.
Wine doesn't make you sick.
Wine doesn't make you
Water
sick.
does.
Back in the day.
Uh-huh.
Until the Irish started distilling, that was a whole different thing. Blame the Irish.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, what's your little syringe thing for?
Oh, that's bee feed. Totally unrelated to this.
Oh, okay, just wondered.
So I make my own version of Honeybee Healthy.
Yeah, I got some of it.
Right. And I add thymol to it. I don't want to pay Honeybee Healthy. Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Nobody's got any other questions?
4 months.
About 4 months.
No questions
That's about
on the
time I get home.
internet either.
What's that?
I'll be back.
And I can bring some. That's no problem. Like I said, I don't mind sharing.